Save the Semantics, episode 159. It is November 7th, 2021. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit. Sorry. Let me redo that, actually. This is the premiere NBA podcast where I go in depth with players, coaches, and other staff about just the crazy world of basketball. And today we are talking with myself. So this is the one and only NBA discussion podcast now. And probably until the end of the season, end of the playoffs, honestly. Because that is the only type of content that I've been consuming for the last month, to be completely honest, since the beginning of the season. No, I'm going to be talking a lot of basketball today and some other stuff. Give a brief overview of how I'm feeling, because I think adding that to this would be kind of nice. I think it's just sort of a good sort of aspect to sort of record keep. I've mentioned this multiple times over the episodes, how I kind of want this to sort of just be like, snapshots into my life at particular moments of time. And I think adding how I feel and my mental state and stuff would be kind of a, just like a good representation of where I'm at. And I think it's good for me as well. I generally speaking, I'm not very open and vulnerable in that sense. Because it's hard, it's hard to kind of speak openly about certain things, what you might be dealing with, right? Specifics, like those things are kind of hard to disclose, just because, that's just sort of in my inherent nature and how I've just kind of grown up and everything. So I don't know if I'll ever be like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've been through, and everything like that. Like, I'm probably not gonna divulge too much. I don't want to overshare in that sense, but I think it's good to just be like, this is where my headspace is at and everything. For my own sake as well, I think it would just be good to, if I have the chance, and if I want to kind of go back to these in the future, hopefully these recordings stay intact online. It's going to be on the cloud, so it should be good. It's going to be online. But, just kind of get a window of where I was at the time of recording, So today, this week, I guess in particular, it was a slow work week, which is both good and bad for me. I like being productive during work. And so when you go from like an insanely busy period of time to essentially nothing, there's like kind of like a withdrawal that I feel, in a sense, where I have to kind of feel like I have to keep working. I've talked about this with my other like coworkers, and they share sort of a similar experience. But man, it's just like you kind of want to keep going in some way, shape, or form. And then so when there's just nothing, not necessarily nothing, but when there's just very little to do, like, it's like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, I'm just sort of, I don't know, it's like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, for some reason I feel like down. I'm like, damn, this is what I'm doing today. I'm not doing a whole lot, I want to feel productive in that sense. And so I've been trying to find certain things to do during work just to kind of fill up the time. And I'm also like, but I should also relax too, like this is the period to like relax and kind of take some time off even during work hours, you know what I mean? And now that I have the I still have some steps to take in order to fulfill my my CPA requirements, so I'll have that to keep me busy. But now that the majority, the big aspects, the exams are kind of out of the way, like it's like, all right, now it's like now I gotta find things to do to like kind of fill my time. And it's kind of like, I talked about this like last, or whenever the fuck, I always talk about a lot of similar topics, but just trying to find like things outside of work to do, and that's kind of been a bit of a struggle in a sense. It's not like I'm mulling over it by any means, but I'm like trying to be like, I'm trying to find other extracurriculars to do outside of work. And that's like, I'm like struggling to find where to even start. Like I exercise, I think maybe it's like, I don't even know like if getting a gym membership at this point is even really worth it, because I don't know how much of my time I'm going to commit. And I already run after work, right? So it's like, do I need to like, I mean, it might be good to do actual, like maybe like lifting and shit. I think might be good for me. But yeah, there's just some things to consider. And so it's been kind of like I don't know. I'm sort of I'm still trying to I'm always kind of like searching for shit. And it's never like it's not always like fulfilling in that sense. I just want to do something to kind of like add to my current schedule, because right now it's a little bare bones at the moment. I'm not gonna lie. I think I just need shit to do. I've always kind of had like, of course I don't want to overwhelm myself, but I've always felt like I've done a decent job at kind of balancing out things. And right now it's not like, I just need, I'm like, I'm lacking some things right now, and I'm trying to fill those things up with other activities and shit. So that's going to continue to kind of be my focus in that sense. I'm trying to find other things to kind of integrate into my life and sort of my weekly or daily routine. So yeah, it's like, do I want to like volunteer? Because I was like kind of looking around, and I just like, the thing about committing to like a voluntary group or activity, it's that like sometimes it can be kind of demanding, I felt, and it's really not gonna, I don't know how much of my time I can really commit to those sort of things, but yeah, I don't know, it's just something to kind of think about. And I just need to like, I just want to do more outside of work and what I'm currently doing, which is just like, it doesn't feel like a whole lot. I'm just kind of repeating the same points over and over. I want to do other things. This is sort of my main through line there. So I'm gonna keep looking around, and hopefully I can kind of latch onto something. Anyways, this is the basketball podcast, so what the fuck am I doing talking about myself? Let's talk some basketball. This week's been pretty sort of similar trajectory to the last couple of weeks. Again, early season, 10 games in, more or less. But I want to give some thoughts on some teams, and how I'm sort of feeling about them. Let's start with our Warriors. We're looking good. We're looking really good, and I'm really happy, man. The win they had against, I think it was the Hornets, that was honestly one of the happiest I've been in a while. I felt like that was just like a very satisfying win. Everything kind of came together. Gary Payton kind of had a great outing. He had the crowd chanting his name. Then they blew out the Pelicans on Friday, I believe. That was a fun game, as as a Warriors fan. So yeah, they're looking good. I think this next, just looking at their schedule ahead, they have a couple of tough games coming up. One against the Bulls. I think that's going to be like their first sort of major challenge. Like, they faced off against the Lakers and the Clippers, but I guess the Clippers maybe could be like a bit of a, what's the word? A bit of a challenge for them. But the Lakers are they're kind of beat up right now. They're missing LeBron. AD went out yesterday. They lost against the Blazers. Lakers are looking pretty rough right now. So for the Warriors, the next challenge for them would be, I believe, the Bulls. And the Bulls are going to be tough. That's going to be a tough matchup for them. Yeah, but I'm very happy so far with how things have looked. They're performing incredibly well. Their defense is killing it. Like, you can sometimes it's a little hard to like for like a casual fan, and I kind of peter between casual and more engaged fan, right? For a casual fan, it might be a little difficult to kind of see the effect that like defense has on the game, but like you don't really see, if you're not super knowledgeable about like the technicalities of the game. Like, sometimes it's a little difficult to decipher like the effect that like a player has on the floor. It's like, well, this guy's not really scoring, so like, why is he on the floor? It's like, well, he brings like a certain presence to the game, high IQ, right? Draymond type player. So but with, especially like when they played against the Hornets, it was just like, they were blocking shots, they were getting steals. It was very like clearly like a very strong defensive presence was like on the floor. So I think that's very exciting, man. I'm very happy to see how things have developed so far. And obviously I'm excited for Clay to come back. He can take his time, man. And I think if we're doing this well, he can take his time and recover. But it would be nice to see him back on the floor, just so he can kind of get his bearings, because he's been out for over 2 years, man. Which is just crazy to think about. So yeah, we all want him back. Let's see. Who else have I been really following? I've been following like the Knicks and stuff. I think I've just been invested with the Knicks because I'm gonna go see them this week, man. I'm leaving for New York this week, so first night I'm gonna spoil myself a little bit on my first day at New York. First day and night in New York. I'm gonna see the Knicks play against the Bucks. Knicks look pretty good. They look like a pretty strong team. They beat the Bucks this week. And they're playing them again on Wednesday at Madison Square Garden, where I'll be seeing them. So yeah, I think they have a strong front court, right, with Randall, and Robinson, and they have some good backup bench players as well. Obviously Derrick Rose. So yeah, they have a pretty they have a very strong teams, and I think um, I don't know. I think they can make a pretty good run. It's again pretty early to really say, to really like cement any ideas, but I think if they can kind of keep a consistent effort, they could, hopefully they can make it past the first round, because I think it'll be exciting to see them kind of deeper in the playoffs. Um, I think it'll be fun to see them play against other teams. I know they lost against the Hawks last year, but I think they look a little better this time around. Um, all right, what next? Give some brief thoughts on other teams other than the Warriors. Bucks are looking a little rough. Bucks are pretty banged up right now. They're missing Middleton. Drew Holiday just came back from an injury. Brook Lopez is out, and DiVincenzo is also out. So they're missing 3 of their starters. And the bench is not their bench is not very strong. They don't have a backup center. They're starting when I watched them play against the Knicks, they were starting Thanasis at the 5, which I don't know about that. They were leading the game. They were up by like 20, and then they lost, which is pretty bad. That's a pretty bad loss for them. So I don't know. I'm like I'm a little pessimistic about their season. I just like for like a deep playoff run, I just don't. It just doesn't feel like they have like a lot of other pieces. Like their starting 5 is like very strong. Like their starting 5 is like one of the top 5. It's like one of the best like starting lineups in the league, right? But I just think everything else is kind of it's a bit difficult to really say where they're at. And just kind of recently, I've kind of hopped in and out of their games. I watched the game where they played against the Knicks, and it just looked kind of rough out there, and their bench wasn't exactly super wasn't super great. So I'm like, I was like thinking to myself, like, what kind of like, I think they'll make the playoffs, right? But I think it might be a bit tight for them, because like the rest of the East is looking very, very strong. Like there's a lot of competition right now. Like, the Cavs are doing very well. I don't know how long they can kind of sustain this run, but they're doing very well. The Raptors are doing pretty good. They just lost against the Nets today, but other than that, they're looking really good. Sixers are killing it. Like a lot of people, including myself, thought like, oh, Sixers are gonna be. They're with the Simmons drama and everything, it's gonna be a little rough for them. But no, they're first in the East, first in the league, pretty much right now. But yeah, Embiid is killing it. I watched the game they played against the Bulls yesterday. Embiid hit this fucking crazy ass like 3. I think his foot. I don't know if his foot was on the line, but I think it was a 3. Which basically just iced the game. He just like waved bye to the crowd, which is a fucking brutal way to go out, but he's earned it. So yeah, Sixers are looking very strong, and then just like all these other teams in the East, you got the Wizards, you got the Bulls, you got the Hawks are kind of not doing super great right now, but I think they'll bounce back. They're kind of in a similar situation with the Bucks in terms of like their record. They're healthy, they're just not doing well. Who else? Charlotte. All these teams that are kind of like fringe playoff teams are doing pretty well at this time. I think 20 games in is usually like a pretty good representation, just based on my experience of watching the NBA over the years. I think 20 is like a decent, sample size of games. So until then, I think maybe you can kind of hold off on making any crazy assumptions, but the East is very competitive this year. So I think the Bucks need to kind of pull their weight, and right now they're not really doing that. Like Giannis is of course playing well, but just like the rest of the team is not super great. So I kind of like made note to myself earlier after I watched them squander the lead to the Knicks. Like I was thinking, like I feel like they might have a season similar to the Lakers when they, the season after they won the championship, right? They, you know, they just look kind of rough, and then they went out with a first round exit against the Suns, this playoffs. And I just I don't know, maybe I feel like that's something that could very easily happen to the Bucks if they don't get healthy, right? Like right now it's just it's a little tough for them because they're missing so many key players and their bench is not very good. So like for example, if they first round, if they face off against the Heat, I think they're done for. I'm giving the Heat specifically because that's that's exactly what happened last year. If they do face against the Heat, Heat are gonna come in with a fucking vengeance. And the Heat are a very deep team this year, and they're a better team than the Bucks right now for sure, 100%. So I think I wouldn't say they get swept, but it'd be a pretty decisive series victory for them in my opinion. And I just I don't know, man, it just doesn't look, it looks a little rough for the Bucks right now. So I feel like they would need to move some pieces around. Talking a lot about the Bucks, but they're they're the champs, they're the defending champs, so I think it's worth mentioning them. Who else? There's a lot of interesting teams to discuss and to talk about. What else? Bulls, I already kind of brought them up. They're doing pretty well. They lost against the Sixers last game, pretty close game. Again, they just kind of fell short. But I think, they're going to be a challenge for us. They're going to be a challenge for the Warriors. So I'm looking forward to that game. Actually, I'm probably not going to be watching that game. Since I'm going to be on my trip, but hopefully they do well. Maybe I can just kind of catch it while I'm at my hotel. We'll see. But yeah, Bulls look fun. DeRozan's been killing it. He looks crazy. Yeah, this is one of the best performances he's had in a very long time, I feel like. I haven't really seen him play, or I didn't really see him play when he was at San Antonio, but I heard that he was a pretty solid contributor. They made the playoffs 1 year, right? But they just they're kind of rebuilding right now, and who knows how long Popovich has left on the team. So yeah, I think there's I went from the Bulls to the Spurs, but yeah, I think the Spurs kind of are rebuilding. I haven't really watched them play all that much, other than against. Did they play the Warriors? I don't remember. Yeah, they played the Warriors, right? I don't remember. All of these games are just kind of morphing together, so I'm forgetting who played against who. But yeah, Jazz look good. Pretty much kind of in the same position as they were when I last talked about them. They look very strong. Probably going to finish top of the conference. They're going to be a problem for sure. I think I'm always going to put this in context of the Warriors. I don't know when they're going to play them. But that's going to be the the challenge. I think that's going to be like if they can hold their own against the Jazz, then I think they can really beat anyone. I mean, they can. I believe it, they can really beat anyone. Um, but yeah, that's gonna be a tough matchup for sure. Um, I think the one thing that we're lacking for the Warriors is like size. Like our front court is really just kind of Kevon Looney. If when Wiseman comes back, then we got some size. Then shit's looking good, right? I haven't really seen Wiseman play all that much. Um, I wasn't really tuned in a whole lot last year, so or last season. So I've heard good things though, and I've heard really good things about Wiseman, and it helps that he's also 7 feet. So much needed size for the Warriors. What else? What else? What else is there to talk about in the league? It's just been a lot of fun, man. I've just been having a lot of fun watching basketball. Like, I think the new rules for refereeing and stuff has definitely been kind of like noticeable. Like, it has definitely kept the game going at a much more consistent pace, right? Because free throws can really just drag a game down. That's like the least exciting part of the game, except if it's like down the line, like down to the wire, and you got to make those clutch free throws to tie the game, or put your team in the lead. That's when it can be kind of exciting. But I just feel like I think these new rules have really kind of it's been good for the most part, right? Like no more what would you say, like Harden-esque fouls, right? Like you're kind of leaning into the player to get contact. What is it, wraparound? The one where you kind of like wrap your arm around to make a shot. I forgot exactly what that's called, but yeah, I think these new rules have been a good change. Been a pretty good change so far. I have seen some comments talking about how the refs sometimes lean too far to like not even calling like obvious fouls, and I have kind of seen some examples of that, and I'm like, damn, dude, like refs really can't, like, I'd say for the most part things have looked good in that sense, like in terms of like keeping the game going, right? But just like you got to make those calls too. Like it can't just be you can't just let some obvious calls go. Like those can be kind of frustrating. I mean, it's always going to be frustrating with the refs, just because this just comes with the nature of that job. But like I just wish I just want it to be perfect, okay? I just want them to make the right call at the right time. You know what I mean? I there's just so much like subjectivity when it comes to refereeing, especially in the NBA, like more so than any other sport I've noticed. Like I just feel like refereeing really doesn't get, and I'm like a casual fan when it comes to other sports, but I just like don't feel like there's like a whole lot of consistency with like refereeing in the NBA. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like for example in hockey like it seems like they have refereeing down pretty well, just based on the games that I've seen. I think I feel like, I don't know, they do a pretty good job of reffing. I don't like, when do we, like, what other sport are you booing the ref, right? Maybe soccer, but like I don't know, like usually the calls they make are pretty, it's like oh, that's obviously like a yellow card, or that's obviously a red card. But with like, I think like the NBA refs are definitely the most hated officials in the game. or like in any sport really. It's just hands down. Like I just don't see other sports having that. Like that's pretty unique to basketball, right? I just like football. Football, there's some subjectivity here and there, but just with the games I've seen, like it's just not. I don't see a whole lot of like booing the refs, right? Like it's a very NBA or basketball related problem, which is interesting. Um, Again, I think it just has to do with how subjective the fouls can be. There's just so many rules too in comparison to other sports, right? Um, it's complicated, man. Basketball's pretty complicated. You can't do this. You can't stay in the paint. If you're on defense, you can't stay in the paint for more than 5 seconds. And then you got defensive, or is it 10 seconds? 10 seconds. Then you get the other team gets a technical free throw. You can't do like a moving screen, right? And some people are like, what? People that are like foreign, and aren't familiar might be like, what the fuck is a moving screen, right? Like I don't. It might be a little difficult to see. And those are like such a. I feel like screens in general are very difficult to call, and I've been noticing there's been a lot of travel calls lately, which might be a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's just like I don't know. There's just a lot that can be missed when you're talking about basketball or making calls during a game. So it's I understand that there's a high level of difficulty when it comes to officiating, but I don't know. It's just it can be frustrating for sure. But for the most part, I'd say things have looked a lot better during a game. Less frustrating calls and less just stewing over the refs. Like just one bad call can just turn over an entire game, right? And it also doesn't help that officiating has had its controversies in the past, right? Kings, Lakers being the most obvious one. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. But yeah, let me think if there's any other teams or any other thing that I've been enjoying during my viewings, but not much else really. There's a nice slate of games today. Warriors are playing. Who are the Warriors playing today? Warriors are playing the Rockets today. So not too much of a challenge there. I can't really say that that's going to be like, wow, these Warriors are going to win it all. Like no offense to the Rockets, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be much of a challenge. Who knows? Maybe an upset. Thunder coming back to beat the Lakers twice after being down 20 points, right? Like that's crazy. Yeah. I've gotten back into Jujutsu Kaisen. I might have mentioned that a little while back, but I've been enjoying that. I think I like taking things slow. I mean, recently that's kind of how I felt. I haven't really. Last show I watched through like back-to-back episodes like that was Squid Game, but most of the time I think I just like taking things on my own and on a nice steady pace, and so far that's kind of worked in my favor. I feel like I've really kind of enjoyed each episode for what it is and not just been like, all right, let's get through this to get to the next one. Oh, let's get through this to get to the next one. Like it's just, sit down and watch 1 or 2 episodes a night. And that's been kind of nice. I've been reading the book that I borrowed last time, A Separation, about 60 pages in. And it's pretty interesting so far. I'm gonna let this train pass. Give me a second. All right. Yeah, so far I'm about 60 pages in to the book. It's pretty interesting. It's very I'm struggling to find the words. It's a very like reflective novel, and the way the book's written feels very much like sort of dreamlike in a sense. I don't know how else to describe it. In most novels, the dialogue is like, you know what, you can tell who's talking and stuff, right? Like the author makes it very clear. You got quotations, right? Like to decipher and to let the reader know, hey, this person is speaking, right? Like it's very obvious. But in this book, it's not really that. Like the dialogue blends into the description of, blends into just like the description of a setting, or it blends into the inner dialogue of what the main character is thinking. So it's like kind of, it's a little, there's like, it's like fuzzy, and you're like unable to really, it's sometimes a little hard to tell, like, oh, who's saying that? Or did she say that? Or did he say that? Like sometimes it's a little difficult to tell apart the two. But once you kind of get into the flow of the style of writing, like you can kind of understand it. Like it is very much like a it's kind of like a spilling of like someone's like subconscious, right? And it feels like they're sort of like reflecting on their experiences, and just sort of like, just like saying it without really any what is it, really any filtering of whether, just like telling apart, like, who said this and who said that, did I say that and I felt that, right? Like it's just like, it's all kind of like mishmashed together in these paragraphs, which is very interesting. So I think it can be it can be frustrating, I think, for some people who are used to more conventional, you know, you know, grammatical, not grammatical, like conventional like syntax and stuff, where they're used to having, dialogue separated from the, other prose of like a novel, or writing in general, right? So I think it can be a little confusing at times, but I think once you kind of get into the book, you understand sort of like the flow of things, the way the main character, I don't even remember like what her, are we even given a name to the main character? I'm not even really sure. It's sort of given like what is it, unreliable narrative a little bit, maybe, because it's all kind of like, it all feels like it's just coming from her like her subconscious, like it's just all coming out. It also feels like, this is what I wanted to say, it feels like she's retelling a story to someone, and she's kind of like speaking for the person in that story, in a sense, right? Like, so when I'm like telling a story, like I would be like, oh, and then he said this, and then you give that person in your story their dialogue, right? And it kind of feels that way. It feels that all of this is stemming from her own personal experiences and her own perspective, right? Very first person perspective, first person view of events, right? So you don't get a whole lot of like, you don't really get you don't really get a glimpse into other characters. It's very much the main character's perception of that character in that sense, right? And it's very interesting. I really enjoy it so far. Hopefully how I described it makes sense. Like if you ever read the book, you'll know what I mean. But it's just kind of like, you could almost say that there's no dialogue, but there is. It's just not written in the conventional way of writing dialogue, where you have quotations. So I think once you get past that, I think it's kind of like it's a little easier to kind of digest these things. And so far, I think there's a lot of like interesting themes that are being brought up in this book. Just talking about the sort of the surface level ideas of like separation, right? Not to quote unquote the novel, but talking about a divorce and how a relationship kind of fell to the wayside because of the big one was like infidelity. Her husband cheated on her, and then also just kind of like certain characteristics upon her reflection kind of stood out to her. Like she started to notice a lot more things that in her past than she did. In a sense, she's sort of like analyzing, his character much more. Once she's sort of, well, she hasn't really been divorced in that sense, but she hasn't seen her ex-husband in a long time. So, once she's kind of removed herself from that situation, she's seen a lot more aspects of his character that she hadn't before, while reflecting on certain experiences in the past and just sort of how he was as a person, right? So there's a lot of interesting things that can be brought up for discussion, and once I finish the book, maybe I'll do a little book review. Maybe I'll start a book club with this podcast. What is this podcast? It's you know what it is. You know what this podcast is. It's Save the Semantics. And that's gonna be it for today. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys next time.